Sag the Gemara, Kufnat Aleph, Amud Aleph. Behema Ikrei Nechse. So we're trying to figure out when somebody gives away their Nechasim, so is the Behema included in the Nechasim or not? So it says the Behema is called a Nechasim. As we see on Makdish, Nechasim, if you're Makdish, you're Nechasim. So that includes V'haisa ben Behema Re'uya Legabi Mizbeach. If you had a Behema that was right to be brought as a Korban, Zecharim, says the Bach, Yimkor Litzarche Olos. Unikevos yimcharu litzarche zivche shlam. So if you have a behema and you're makdish your nechasim, so we see clearly a behema is included in your nechasim, and therefore, as if you have a zachar behema, then it's going to go for an ola. You're going to sell it and use it for an ola, and if it's an akeva, then you're going to go ahead and it's going to end up being used for a shlamim. But again, for our purposes, we see that when I'm makdish nechasim, so that includes the behemas in the nechasim as well. Ofos ikre nechse. Ophos are also called nechse, referred to as nechse didnan. Hamakdish nechasav hayu behen dvarim haruyin legabe mizbeach. From makdish and nechasim, and there are things that are right legabe mizbeach, like what? Like yenos, ushmanim, ve'ophos. So at the end of the day, we see that also ophos are called nechasim, because if I'm makdish my nechasim, then I have to go ahead and I have to give ophos as well, again, including in the nechasim. So we've seen that behemas are included when I'm give all of my nechasim, or makdish all of my nechasim, and ophos are included in nechasim as well. Zak the Gemara, tefillin ikrei nechse. Tefillin are also part of my nechasim. Did not hamakdish nechasim mal lo tefillin. If I makdish all of my nechasim, tefillin are included, and I have to be malin. I'm not going to give my tefillin to hekdesh, but I have to assess my tefillin, see how much they are, and then I have to go ahead and I have to give the value of my tefillin. I have to be po the tefillin, because that's also nechasim. Ibayilhu. The question is, Sefer Torah mai. If I say that I'm giving all of my nechasim, does that include the Sefer Torah that I own? What's the shot? What's the pshat? Or what's the shayla? Kevan delo mizdavein to asul izvune lav nechsehu. Maybe since you can't sell it, so l'mayis it's not considered nechasim. Or dilma kevan de mizdavein lil motora v'lisa isha nechsehu. Or maybe since we do sell it under certain circumstances, in order to learn Torah, in order to marry a woman, so it is considered to be nechasim teku, tishbi yitaris kushos ubayos, and therefore again, if you give up all of your nechasim, or if you sell all of your nechasim, tishbi yitaris kushos ubayos, if that's included in the nechasim, and seemingly it would not be included because hamotzi mechavero olav raya. Fine. If you're just waking up, then let's go. Ime de Rav Zutra. We're going to talk about now all of the cases of Shchiv Meira. Let's just chazer for a second. Anybody want to chazer for us? Okay, no volunteers. So Shchiv Meira, what did we say? If it's Shchiv Meira, we're in the middle of Kufna and Aleph, right, where the parentheses are. We said that if a Shchiv Meira gives away all of his stuff, what happens? Gives away all of his stuff.
He can take it back.
He can take it back, and if he gets better, he gets it back. But if he dies, it goes to the person. Do you need a kinyan or you don't need a kinyan?
No.
Don't need a kinyan. So don't need a kinyan and can take it back if he gets better. Person who gives somebody who gives Shchiv Meira that gives some of his properties, what happens?
He's in trouble.
He can't get it back if he dies.
He can't get it back if he doesn't die. Can't get it back if he dies, and you need to make a kinyan, or else he wasn't actually maknet. Right. One last thing. Why is it that a person who gives some of his properties is considered to be a matana? Why is that? Why is that?
Because he wants to give.
Because we assume we don't know what he's thinking. So we assume, right? It's all based on what we think he's thinking. So when he gives all of his properties, what do we think he's thinking? We think he's giving all of his properties because he's given in hope. He's kicking the can and he's saying, I'm out of here. And he's giving up all of his properties. Now again, and I explained this in the first year also, it's important to remember, it's going to come up today also. When we talk about Shchiv Meira, it's hard for us to relate to today, because today we talk about goseis. Rahman al when somebody's at the end of their life. A goseis, unless there's a miracle, l'mala min ateva, is going to die. Back in the day, when a person had a fever, so they could be a Shchiv Meira. They could think, today, nobody who has a fever is going to think that they're dying, unless under extreme circumstances. But you have to put everything into perspective. Like, what's happening here? The guy's not necessarily a goseis, or else, how's he getting better? It doesn't just mean the miracle worker, seemingly. It seems like the person was there, they were sick, and they were at a time where they just didn't know. A person had a fever, it could either be nothing, or it could mean you have tuberculosis, or you have something and you're going to die within a few days. So it's just important to put that into perspective, because we keep throwing around Shchiv Meira, getting better, not getting better, this, that. Like, what are you talking about? We're talking about a case, and that's why we have to read their mind. Because at the end of the day, there's a 50%, the way the Gemara sounds like, it's just as good of a chance that they're going to get better than if they don't get better. Not necessarily is that true, but I'm just trying to paint the picture. So therefore, Shchiv Meira, when they give away their properties, we have to read their mind. How do we read their mind? Well, we read their mind. We're given rules. If they give away everything, then what we read in their mind is that they had intention that they wanted to only give it away if they die. If they give away half their stuff, or some of their stuff, or most of their stuff, but leave some stuff, kedei parnasaso, like we said, for themselves, so then in Echnami, what do we think they have in mind? They want to give all that stuff as a matana. So the last point I just want to make is, and it'll come up today, what happens if we know for sure that a shchiv meirah gives some of their stuff away, but they're only doing it because they want, because they think they're going to die? Seemingly, if we know, based on their words, let's say they say, I'm giving you half my stuff. So we would say, okay, they're giving it as a matana. Let's say I say, I'm giving you half my stuff, but I'm only doing so because I think I'm going to die. So then the svara gets thrown out the window, because then we can't assess what they're thinking. We know what they're thinking. And we know that they're thinking that they want to give it only if they die. And just like anybody can give something al tanai, seemingly in this case as well, they can give it al tanai, they can give it on condition that they don't die. And therefore we're not going to guess what they're thinking when we know what they're thinking. Just want to throw that out there because that's going to come up today in the Gemara. So let's go forward now based on what I just told you. Ime de Rav Zutra bar Tovia, chasvinu l'nechasa l'Rav Zutra bar Tovia, de baya le'ensuve le'Rav Zvid. First we're going to have one other case, and then we'll get to that. We mentioned yesterday that there was something called trying to be, there was something where they were trying to hide the money from their new husband. Right? There was a case where the person was getting married for the second time, and they didn't want their new husband to have the right to the stuff because they wanted it to go to their original kids. So she wanted to get married. Rav Zutra bar Tuvia's mother wanted to get married to Rav Zvid. And what happened? And she says the Rashbam on the right, V'chein pirsha lo be'edya k'demuvchach b'sefer degal yadaita mishum di barli in suve he nod nalazeh. She was only giving the stuff to her son because she wanted to get married to Rav Zvid. De'ein ze ela lahavriach mibala. She wanted to hide it from her new husband. Not a good start to the marriage. But again, it's not that she's trying to not hide it from him. It's that we understand, and people want to do this today also. They don't want to give their assets from their first marriage to the new husband. They want to, right? So it's not so uncommon that somebody would sign, or especially when the husband would sign some type of papers which says that she doesn't get a prenup, that she doesn't get to inherit everything. So at the end of the day, you have this woman who wants to get married, and she makes it clear that she's only giving it to her son because she wants to hide it from her husband. In Sivav Girsha, she gets married, and things don't work out. So now she comes to her son and she wants the money back, and he says no. Amar mishum insuvi v'ha insuvi. You told me that you're giving it to me because you were getting married, so that meant because you're getting married. But once you're married, it's mine. Amar le Rafuna Berei de Rav Yoshua. Rafuna Berei de Yoshua said to him, ridiculous. Mishum da'asum mimulai amrisu mile mulisa. We say this to people. We want to say this to people sometimes. Just because you come from mulasa, you're going to say blemish things. What kind of ridiculous nonsense are you talking about? Afilu l'man da'amar mavreches kani. Even according to the opinion in that Gemara, that a person to whom the Isha gives the money, a third party, is kana the money, hani mili hecha de logal yadaita. We can argue that that's when she doesn't reveal why she's giving the money to the third party. She's getting married, she gives it to a third party. We can say that they're kona because she didn't make it clear that she only wants to give it on condition that she's getting married, or because she's getting married. So then we can say that l'maisa she can't take it back. Here she made it very clear that the only reason she's giving her son the money is to hide it from her new husband. And therefore, Lamaisa, when she goes to get married to her new husband, she temporarily is hiding it with her son. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out, so then what happens? She gets the money back. And that's the halacha, that if she tries to be mavriach the money on condition that Lamaisa she should be able to go ahead and get married, so since she only gave it because it was clear to us that she wanted to hide the money, therefore, at the end of the day, when she goes ahead and she gets divorced, she gets it back. Fine? Good. Now we're going to get to the Shemira again. Ime de bar Chama, the mother of Rami bar Chama, be'orsa kasvinu l'nechasa l'Rami bar Chama. We're also going to talk about whether you can go back. We spoke about this a little bit, whether Shemira can go back on what they said or not. So at night, she gave all of her nechasim, seemingly all, to Rami bar Chama. What happens when you give all of your nechasim? You don't need a kinyan, and if you die, he gets it. If you get better, you get it back. B'safra kasvinu l'Ravukva bar Chama. In the morning, she changed her mind and gave everything to Ravukva. So Rami bar Chama went to his rabbi. He knew who to ask, and he says, "You get the money." He went to his rabbi. He knew who to ask. He says you get the money. So there are two different rabbis, and they said different things. One said the first guy gets it. One guy said the second guy gets it. Also, Rav Sheshes coming to Rav Nachman. Rav Sheshes, who says the first guy gets it, asked Rav Nachman, Amar Lei. Let's not see the Gemara for a second. What do we think, based on what we know until this point? If a Shchim Meirah gives something to somebody at night and changes their mind in the morning, who gets it? Based on what we know so far. Shchim Meirah gives something to somebody at night, says, I'm giving all my stuff to you, and then in the morning changes their mind and gives it to number two. Who do we think gets it at this point, before we saw the Gemara? I always thought, before I saw this Gemara, that number two gets it. That a Shchim Meirah has a right to change their mind until they die. Because it comes back to them at the end of the day anyway. If it was a Shchim Meirah b'mixas, if they gave some of the property, that's it, you're finished. You gave matana, assuming there was a kinyan, it's over. But if you give all of your property, it comes back to you if you get better. Seemingly it's still in your possession. I always thought until this point of the Gemara, if I give all of my stuff away, then at the end of the day I can change my mind. And we said this, I think, 2 days ago. You can change your mind 100 times until the point that you die. And whoever you die, it sounds like hot potato. Whoever's the last one standing, whoever's the last one, so you don't have to be nice to somebody, you just have to be nice to somebody right before they die. And the last one standing is the one who's going to get it.
But even matana without a kinyan.
Again, we're assuming a matana without a kinyan won't work. But a matana with a kinyan is too late. We're assuming that Shchim Meirah b'mixas did a kinyan as well, which was the halacha, and then they're done. But over here, where you gave everything to one person, you have a right to change it 100 times. That's what I understood. Says Rav Sheshes, no, it goes to number one. Why? Amalei, my time okme marle ravokma barchama imishum dahadraba v'hashchiva. He says, I don't understand. So again, Rav Ukva said that Rav Nachman gets it, the second one. Rav Sheshes says, in front of Rav Nachman, who said the second one get it, Amar Lei, he said to him, my time okme marle ukva barchama. Why are you giving it to the second guy? Imishum dahadraba, if you're saying because he was hadraba v'hashchiva, he ended up dying. Says the Rashbam, 6 lines from the bottom, v'ha mesa. The bishlama imlo mesa tnan lo shir kargol shrimanasa matana k'moshe chazim min arishon v'natshon l'sheni tachsema min hasheni nami im tirtza. If the guy gets better, then I understand that it goes to number two, he says. Because if he gets better, it comes back to him and he can give it to whoever he wants. Aval ata shemeta tiskaye matana rishona v'yikne rishon sharehi nadna b'man shchimer udvarei kichtuv v'nuchamusarin k'shemeta. When he gave it to him originally, you're right. If he got better in between, it comes back to him and then he gave it to whoever he wants. But if he gives it to A, and then he ends up dying from the original illness, it was as if he gave it to A originally. That's the svara, which is not like we thought until now. That's Rosh Hashem's svara. Amar Lei, the way that we thought and the way that it seems to be the halacha. Hachi Amar Shmuel, no, you're wrong. Kol she'ilu amar chozer. Anybody we're dealing with a person who, if they got better, they get it back. What's that? The person who gave away all of their money. Chozer b'mana, so he can change his mind. Therefore, over here as well, like we thought all along, it goes to number one. He says because at the end of the day, it goes to number two, because at the end of the day, you can go ahead and you can change your mind as many times as you want. So he says back to him, Emer Damar Shmuel la'atzma la'achar miyamar. Maybe we can suggest that Shmuel, when he says that a man Shchim Meirah can change his mind, that's only if he changes his mind and decides that he wants it back for himself. But not that he could change it from person one to person two. Amar Lei, he says back to him, no, Beperish Amar Shmuel, Bein la'atzmo, Bein la'acher. And that's how we paskin, and that's what we thought until now. That at the end of the day, a Shchim Meirah who gives away all of his property, again, once he gives away some of his property, assuming he does a kinyan, too late, he can't change anything. It's a matana. But a Shchim Meirah who gives away all of his property, he can change his mind as many times as he wants, Bein la'atzmo, Bein la'acher, as many times as he wants, and as we'll see, even if they do a kinyan, as many times as he wants, until he ends up dying. And that's what we thought, and that's why, according to this, it would go to the second guy. If he gives it to one person at night and another person in the morning, and then he dies, it would go to the guy who got it in the morning, because again, a Shchim Meirah who gives all of his property away can go ahead and change it as many times as he wants. So it's very glot, and we're going to stick with these laws the entire time. Give everything, get it back if you live, change your mind as many times as you want. Give some, finito, done, matana, assuming you did a kinyan, and you can't do anything, you can't change anything. You don't get it back, and you can't give it to somebody else. Ime de Rav Amram Chasida, the mother of Rav Amram Chasida, Havale Meluga de Shtar. She had a whole bag full of shtaros. What was this bag? It was a lot of IOUs. Not that she owed other people. People owed her a lot of money. She had this whole bag of shtaros. Kishchava Amra, when she became sick, when she became a shchivra, she said, Lihave la Amram Brei. I want to give it to Amram, my son. Asu achua lekame Rav Nachman. All of a sudden, the son that never talked to her before comes and says, Mom, 1 second. Why are you giving it all to him? Amrulei v'halo mashach says, well, he didn't do a kinyan. Amar lahu, it doesn't matter. Divrei Shchim Meirah kichtuv v'nuchamusarin damu. she gave seemingly all of her stuff. Seemingly this was all of her stuff. That's what it seems like. She didn't do a Mashiach. It doesn't matter. That if a Shchimera does and goes ahead and gives over the stuff, so it's done, and they don't have to necessarily do a kinyan. Now, it's not clear whether she was giving all of her stuff or some of her stuff, but again, we're going to talk about that today, whether you have to actually do a kinyan for all of your stuff as well. But seemingly, she gave away everything. You don't need to do a kinyan, as we said, and that's it. Shalom HaYisrael. Or at least, shalom from Aram Chasida. The other guy's not so happy. Ach Seder Rav Tuvi bar Rav. Another story. The sister of Rav Tuvi, Matna, Rav Tuvi bar Rav Matna, Kasvinu l'nechas Rav Tuvi bar Matna b'Safra. In the morning, she gave all of her stuff. She was a shchimera. She wrote all of her stuff. Again, doesn't have to be writing, because if we're dealing with a shchimera, she can even say it orally. She gives all of her stuff to Rav Tuvi. Lipanya, towards the evening, Asarav Achdevoy bar Ramasna Bachala. Her other son comes crying to her at night. Says, I want some of the stuff. But that's not what he says. Amar Lai says, Hashta Amri Martzurva Merabanan, Umar Lafzur Merabanan. He says, when everybody hears that you gave all of the stuff to that brother and not to me, what are they going to think? The reason that the sister gave all the stuff to that brother is because he's a Talmud Chacham. They didn't give it to the Nebuch guy who's not a Talmud Chacham. Everybody's going to think I'm not a Talmud Chacham. Therefore, I want you to give some of the stuff to me as well. So what does she do? She's easily, a lot of these people in the stories are easily swayed. Kazvinu niale. So she changed her mind and gave all of her stuff to the second brother. Also, lekami de Rav Nachman. So Rav Tuvi came before Rav Nachman. Amar lei, hachi amar Shmuel, kol sheilu amar chozer b'manaso. Like we just said, no, you have no tainas. You have no claim. She changed her mind. She's allowed to change her mind as many times as she wants because she was giving away all of her stuff. Lamaisa, when she gave it to Rav Tuvi, your brother when she gave it to you, Rav Tuvi first, it didn't matter. When she changed her mind, the brother was able to convince her. Too bad. If you want to go, so you can go ahead. See, she's easily swayed. Go ahead and try to convince her as well. And if you do, then she dies. Then Lamaisa, you'll get the stuff.
Is this a chiddush? Because this is matana.
What? It's not a
matana.
matana.
What
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about when the mother gave.
It's not about a sister.
A sister.
A sister, rather. A sister gave. Sorry.
Again, she's a
shchimera.
matana. Who said she gave us a matana? She's a shchimera. Who said she gave us a matana?
The lashon here, chozim matana so.
Yeah, but that's, no, 1 second. That's always. Shmuel says, Kol shi lo amar chozer b'mana. So we're dealing with the matna, it's called the matna shchimera.
Okay, all right.
Anytime, it's called a matna shchimera. That's what we call it all the time. Matna shchimera means a gift of a shchimera, not necessarily to be treated. Matna shchimera bikulo is not considered a matana. Matna shchimera b'mixas is considered a matana. Trying to throw me off over here. Says the Gemara, Achse de Rav Dimi bar Yosef. We're being taped. Come on. Havala piskasa de Pardesa. So now the sister of Avdimi bar Yosef had a stretch of orchard. Now again, seemingly at this point, this was all of her stuff. What happened? Kol emas tahavachal shava machnile nihale. Whenever she would become sick, she would give as a manna shchimera the entire orchard to her brother, Rav Dimi. The chikaima, and every single time she got better, which is again what I was telling you before, that clearly if she's getting better and getting sick every single time, it's clearly not what we define as a goses. And whenever she got better, have a hadraba. Again, you don't have to take back a manna shchimera, you have a right. So he got all excited. Every single time she got sick, he was like, oh, Baruch Hashem, my sister's sick again. And then every single time she got better, he's like, oh, man, she got better, I have to give it back again. He got very frustrated. He's like, I just want to keep that orchard. Says the Gemara, Zimna Chada Chalsha. One time she got sick. Shalchalei, she said, come visit me, Takani. Come visit me and I'll give you all the stuff. Shalach lo ba'ina. He says, I'm not traveling again to see you. Every time I come to see you, and I'm excited, and you're giving me the stuff. Not that I have to come to get the stuff, but I come to see you, and part of coming to see you, give me the stuff. And every single time I come, you end up getting better. Call me when you're ready to die. Shalchalei. So she says to him, come visit me. Takani kolecha debais. Come visit me, and I promise you that when you visit me this time, I'll do a kinyan. No, not that I'll die this time. I promise you that when you come to visit me this time, I'll do a kinyan. You could do a kinyan however you want to do it, and Lamais, it'll be yours regardless of whether I get better or not. I just want you to come visit me because I feel like I'm really dying this time. Azal, he went. Shaira v'kanumina. He's a smart guy. He's a rabbi. So what does he do? He goes out and he knows if he takes everything, then what? She can go back on it. So what does he do? Azal, Shaira v'kanumina. That's what we said you need to do. She takes most of it. He leaves over a little bit, so that's shchiv meira b'mixas. What else do you need for shchiv meira b'mixas? As we said, you need a kinyan. He does a shchiv meira b'mixas with the kinyan, and he's a smart guy, a smart rabbi. He's got it. He's good to go. Kikaima, she got better. Hadraba, she wanted to go back. He said, got it. This time it's mine. Asli lekami Rav Nachman. So she went before Rav Nachman and says, I want my stuff back. Shalach lei. So Rav Nachman sent for Avdimi, and he said, come to me, come to Beis Din. Lo asa, he said, this is ridiculous, I'm not going. Amar ma ise, why should I go? Hashayra v'kanamina. I dotted all my I's, I crossed all my T's, I know for sure that it belongs to me no matter what. Shalach le Rav Nachman said, not so fast. Ilo asis, if you don't come, machina lecha besilu de lo mabadama. I will, if you don't come to Beis Din, I will smite you with a thorn that will not draw blood. I.e., I will put you into cherem. Amar lehu l'sadeh, so Rav Nachman said, and this is what I said to you before. Amar lehu l'sadeh, Rav Nachman said to the witnesses, Hechi havamasa, what exactly happened here? Amr le, they said, this is what she said, this is what we heard her saying. Amri hachi, we heard her saying the following. Voi deka misa hachitasa. Woe is to me, the old lady who's dying, and my brother won't even come to see me. Woe is to me who's dying, and my brother won't even come to see me. Amar lehu, says Rav Nachman, imkein, if it's so, have a mitzave machmas misa, umitzave machmas misa choser. That means that she gave it because she was going to die, and if you give it because you're going to die, you get it back. What are we saying here? Smart rabbi, but smarter lady.
He's saying what your intention was.
She's saying exactly what I told you before. The only reason that we ended up going ahead and giving a mana shchiv meira b'mixas to a person as a matana, even with a kinyan, which is what he did. He got it, and he got part of it. And he did it with a kinyan. Why do we give a mana shchiv meira b'mixas with a kinyan to the person? And why do we say the guy can't take it back? Because we assume that in his mind, he's clearly giving it as a matana. But over here, what did she do? She made it very clear by saying, woe is to me that's about to die, woe is to me that's about to die. She made it very clear that she was only giving it to her brother. Why? Because she knew that she was about to, because she thought she's about to die. And we said, even a matna shchimera b'mixas, even with a kinyan, when she's only giving it because she thinks she's about to die, we consider that to be the same halacha as a matna shchimera b'kulo, and therefore even with the matna shchimera b'mixas, with a kinyan, she able to get it back. Smart lady. If she was a rabbi, then we'd be really smart. Smart rabbi and smart lady. Yes.
He pushes back. She wants to give him everything, and he said, "I'll take only part of it."
She says, "I want you to go ahead. She said, "I keep getting better, and I want to make sure that you'll be happier. I just want you to come visit me. Do whatever you got to do. I don't know the halachas. I didn't necessarily learn the gemaras. Do whatever you got to do to make sure that no matter what happens to me, I can't get it back." So he said, "I know the halacha. The halacha is that if she gives me everything, then lemaisa she could take it back." So he specifically said, "I'll take most of it. I'll do a kinyan."
She knows this.
This is what he did. He did a kinyan with her for most of her properties.
To take back what she didn't want to take back.
I'm sorry?
She's technically he's forcing her to take back.
No, she wants everything back now. She just in the initial thing, he's basically saying to her, no, she did not want it back. She said, I just want my brother to come and visit me. Do whatever you got to do. Work out whatever contracts you got to work out to make sure that you can keep it no matter what happens to me. Lamaisa, he ended up doing what halacha tells him he needs to do. The problem is, when she came to Rav Nachman was also smart, and he said, well, he was clearly looking for a way out of it, and he said, well, we know that the halacha is that if we know what she's thinking, so at the end of the day, a manish chimera, even b'mixas, is not going to go ahead and work, and she could be choser.
Wait till she gets sick the next time.
Yeah, I don't think he's coming back.
If she's very sick, those rules would apply. But if she says, I'm going to die,
It's the same thing. Same thing. Anytime we said shchimera means somebody who's very sick or somebody who thinks that there's a chance that they're going to die. We said we need to assess their mind. So the way that we assess their mind in general is if they give away everything, we assess that in their mind they're thinking, I'm giving away everything because I'm going to die. Therefore, if they get better, they get it back. Right. If they give away half of it, then we assess in their mind that what they're thinking is, regardless of whether I get better or die, I want to give it away as a matana. But if she gives away half of it, and we know what she's thinking, because she tells us I'm only giving it away because I'm about to die, then in that case, even though she only gave half of it, and even though she did a kinyan, she gets it back because she only gave it because she was going to die. That's the halacha. Zok the Gemara. Itmar. So you're shaking your head. You feel bad for Rav Dimi, right?
No, what about if she's a hypochondriac? I'm
okay.
dying,
Zok the Gemara. Itmar. Ma'na shchib meira b'mixas. So now we're going to have a little bit of a machlokas. Until now, I think everything is glot, and all the stories are making sense. But until now, we also said that you have to have a manash chemira b'mixas, you have to have a kinyan as well. Now we're going to have a machlokas, and we're actually going to have one opinion that says that by a manash chemira b'mixas, when you give half of your property, it works as a matana even if you don't do a kinyan. That's going to be Rav Nachman's opinion. And then Rava, interpreting Rav Nachman, is going to say the way that we've been saying until now, that if you give a matana, you need to go ahead and you need to do a kinyan as well. Itmar manash chimra b'miksa samru rabbanan kamedu Rava mishmei de marzutra breder Rav Nachman domer mishmei de Rav Nachman hare he kimanas bari v'hare he kimanas chimera. This is not like we've been learning until now. The way that Rav Nachman learns at this point is that a matna shchimera b'mixas, when you give half of your stuff away or some of your stuff away as a shchimera, so which we said it's a matana, it has some of the laws of bari and some of the laws of a shchimera. Hari hikemanas bari in the sense that shim amad eno choser. If you give away half your stuff and you get better, you don't get it back because we consider it to be a matana. Hari hikemanas shchimera delo ba yakinyan. But according to this opinion, it's like a matna shchimera bekula where you don't need to do a kinyan, so you don't need to do a kinyan b'mixas either. Amar lehu Rava. Rava says, Lava mina lehu lo titlu buki suike b'Rav Nachman. Did I not tell you not to hang ridiculous empty pictures on Rav Nachman? I.e., you didn't hear Rav Nachman right. So now we're going to have Rav Nachman was the first opinion, and now this is going to be Rav Nachman as understood by Rava. Hachi Amar Rav Nachman. This is what Rav Nachman really said. Harehi kimanas bari. It's like a manas bari fully. Ubaya kinyan. And just like when I give a regular matana, it needs to be with a kinyan and I cannot go back. So too over here, I can't go back, but it needs to have a kinyan. So everybody agrees that Lamaisa, you can't retract on this manash chimera b'mixas. The question is, do you need a kinyan or do you not need a kinyan? The way we've been learning until now is the way that Rava interprets Rav Nachman, that you need a kinyan. And the way that other people interpret Rav Nachman is that Rav Nachman would say you don't need a kinyan for a manash chimera b'mixas. Eisvei, we're going to give three cases. That's the Gemara. Rava le Rav Nachman. So Eisvei Rava asks a question on Rav Nachman, on his understanding of Rav Nachman, which is the way that we've understood until now, that at the end of the day you need a kinyan for a manash chimera b'mixas. And again, if you give away half of your property as a shchimera, but you don't do a kinyan, it's not chal and you can go back. Shayir karka kolshu manaso kayemes. If I leave a little bit of karka, then the matana is kayemes, because again, that's a manash chimera b'mixas, and we know that when you give it away, the matana is a matana. What do you see there? What do you not see in the Mishnah? It doesn't say anything about doing a kinyan. Therefore, it would seemingly be good even without a kinyan. Why do you, Rav Nachman, as is understood by me, Rava, say you need a kinyan? Says the Gemara, my lav de lo kanu miyade, is it not that there was no kinyan? Lo de kanu miyane. No, there was a kinyan, de kanu mine. Ihachi, the problem is that if you tell me that the ratio was with a kinyan, ema seifa, you have a problem in the seifa. Lo shir karka kolshu. If the shchimera gives everything, ema naso kayemes, then he can go back. But over there, v'i de kanu mine, amai ema naso kayemes. I don't understand. If you tell me that the Reisha has a kinyan, then the Sefer has a kinyan as well, and then you tell me a shchimera who gave away all of his properties with a kinyan, he could still go back. I don't understand. Amar le, you're right. Hachi Amar Shmuel, new law. This is another. Again, we're learning a lot of basics today. Shchimera shekasav kol nechasav la'acherim. If a shchimera writes all of his properties to somebody else, afal pisha kanu miyado amar chozer. Even if they do a kinyan, if he gives away everything, he can go back. Biadua shelo haya makne, as we see in the Bach, shelo haya kinyan ela machmas misa. So now we have a new rule. The new rule is that we said a man shchimera gives away everything, he can go back on it. Even if the shchimera did a kinyan on all of his stuff, he can go back on it as well. So how do you read the Mishnah? Now the Mishnah is very glot. Again, now we have Rav Nachman, as understood by Rav, is saying the following. He's saying when it's a mana shchimera bekula, when he gives away everything, so lemaisa, you don't need a kinyan, and even if you do a kinyan, the guy still can get everything back if he gets better. And when we're dealing with a mana shchimera b'mixas, so over there you need a kinyan, and if you don't do a kinyan, then lemaisa, the guy can go back. So now read the Gemara back in top where it says Esvei. Shayir karka kolshehu matnaso kayemes. If the guy leaves any amount of karka, the matana is kayemet, assuming that you have a kinyan. Right? Assuming that there's a kinyan. Lo shayir karka kol shehu. If you don't leave over any karka, even with the kinyan, we're talking about with a kinyan, ema naso kayemes. Then it's not matano kayemes if you don't leave anything over, because at the end of the day, you can go ahead and you can go back. So it comes out again that lemaisa, even if you have a kinyan, the shchimera bekulo can go back. And if you don't have a kinyan, then the shchimera b'mixas can go back. But if there's a kinyan and a shchimera b'mixas, that's the only case. So again, if I ask you at this point, what's the only case you can go back? The only case that you can't go back is when it's a shchimera b'mixas with a kinyan. If you give away some of your properties with a kinyan, then you can't go back. If you give all of your properties away, or if you give away some of your properties without a kinyan, you can go back. Or even in the case of shchimera b'mixas with a kinyan, if you make it clear, not that if you make it clear to what you're thinking that you're only giving it away because you think you're about to die, then we treat it as a shchimera bekulo, giving away everything, which we said even with the kinyan, you'll be able to get it back. So it's very glad. You have those basic rules, and lemaisa, all the other stories will fall into place. Zok the Gemara. Eisvei Rav Mishar Shel Rava. Another question on Rav Nachman as understood by Rava that you need a kinyan. Maisa be'iman shel b'nei Ruchel. Ruchel was the father. So the mother of the sons of Ruchel, Haitachol Lever Amar, she said, Tinasein kfinasi lebiti. I want to give this jewelry to my daughter. Who b'shnei masar money. It was worth $12,000, a lot of money. She wanted to give it to her daughter. What's the problem? Well, who was upset? The sons, because they were going to inherit it. V'meisa, and now she dies. V'kimu divareha. They were mekayim her divar. What was she? Seemingly, what was this? Was this all of her stuff or not all of her stuff? Seemingly, this was not all of her stuff. It's just a jewelry. And yet, v'kimu divareha, as the Rashbam says, these are her words. And what did they do? They gave and they followed her words, even though she was giving it. So what do we see here? It was a shchiv meira b'mixas. It was without a kinyan. And yet, what did they do? They went ahead and they gave it to the daughter and didn't take it back. So you see that a shchiv meira b'mixas, even without a kinyan, madnasa will be kayemes. Zak the Gemara, hasam b'mitzave machmas misa. Again, why do we see over there that it worked? It worked because she was clearly doing it because she was going to die. What does that mean? Hasam b'mitzave machmas misa, she'eskira demidagas misa hi mechalages. That it was because she was giving it because of the misa. Demitzave machmas misa lo ba'ikinian bein ikashir bein lekashir. Again, now we're looking at it from the other side. Just like we said before, that after the fact, if you go ahead and you did a mixas, and there was no kinyan, so it's not going to work. But we said again, if you make it clear that you're only doing it because you're going to die, then you're going to get it back. So too over here, if you make it clear that you're only doing it because you're going to die, then you don't need a kinyan. Like we said. This is perfect again. It fits into the rule as well. The mother gave it, and she didn't do a kinyan. It was only b'mixas. Answers the Gemara. It doesn't matter. Because when you're doing a mixas, it works without a kinyan if it's not a matana. If we know for sure that you're giving it, usually when you give a mixas, we assume it's a matana, you need a kinyan. But if we know for sure that you mentioned, that's what Rashbam said, dimaskira, shehiskira, she mentioned with her mouth, she made it clear that she was giving it because she thought she was going to die, then even though it was a shchimer rabbe mixas, if she mentioned it that she was giving it because she's going to die, we treat it like a shchimer rabbe kulo, and therefore it'll work even without a kinyan. It all works with those rules.
She would get it
and
back.
if she would get better, then she can get it back. She could take it back. And then the sons will get it if she ends up dying afterwards. Yeah. Eisvei Ravina L'Rava. One more question on this understanding that you need a kinyan. Ha'omer tnu get ze le'ishti. If you say, give this get to my wife, u'shtar shichur ze la'avdi, or give this shtar shichur to my eved, v'ameis, and you end up dying, lo yitnu la'achamisa. We don't give it to achamisa because they're no longer your wife and they're no longer your eved. They're freed when you die, or they were passed on to your kids, and she's no longer married to you. You can't give a get to a lady you're not married to anymore. Tenu mana leploni. What's this an example of, seemingly? It's an example of a mana shchiv meira, where I go and I said, give a money, which is not all of my money. Give some of my money to this person after I die. Vameis, and he dies. Yitnu lachar misa. So you give it after he dies. But what's that? That's a manas shchiv meira b'mixas. But it doesn't matter. But there was no kinyan. We're assuming. The Gemara is learning that assuming he was sick, let's say, and there was no kinyan here, we give it to the guy. So what do you see? You see that a manas shchiv meira b'mixas without a kinyan will still work. It says the Gemara, mimai delo kanamine. How do you know that there was no kinyan? Dumya de get, because it's similar to the case of a get, because it says a get here. Ma get lav bar kinyan. Just like a get, you can't be kona a get on behalf of someone else. I can't go ahead and do a kinyan on behalf of a woman for the get. So too, afhai nami de lo kanamine. Therefore, we assume that nobody did a kinyan on behalf of this person, and therefore we have a proof that lamaisa we're giving it to this person after the shchimera died. But it was a shchimera b'mixas. It wasn't all of his property, and yet there was no kinyan. Says the Gemara, hasam nami b'mitzah ve'machmas misa. Again, the reason we're giving it to him, that's how I knew, because mitzah ve'machmas misa, the Gemara learns this case as being a case where the guy said, I'm about to die, I want to give this person some of my property. We give it to them after death, even though there was no kinyan, because again, when you give part of your property and you make it clear that you're only giving it because you're going to die, we treat it as if you're giving all of your property, and therefore it'll work even without a kinyan. You just have to remember that rule, and this whole Gemara makes perfect sense. Let's just end with this. Rav Huna Breda Rav Yeshua Amar. And this is summing up everything that we've said. Mitzave machmas misa. That's what? That's if you give something machmas misa, bein b'mixas, bein b'kulo. Ba'alma ba'yakinyan. So if you're mitzave machmas misa in general, you need a kinyan. V'chitanya hani masnisa. I'm sorry, he's arguing. Mitzave machmas misa be'alma ba'yakinyan. If you give machmas misa, you need a kinyan. By mixa, seemingly. That's Rav Huna. He seems to be arguing. V'chitanya hani masnisa. And when it says these masnisim, the last two mishnahs, which say that you don't need a kinyan, is bebachale kol nechasav. De'ahi man neshchimer rashavya. Rav Huna actually argues. Again, at this point, we're not going to paskin like him, so let's not get too complicated and too confused. But Rav Huna is arguing and saying, no, I hold that a man neshchimer b'mixas needs a kinyan even if you know that they're doing it because they're dying. Lamais, at the end of the day, if that's true, so then why in these cases, the last two cases, which were cases of Matna Shchimira b'mixas, and they didn't do a kinyan, and we said it's okay, and the reason we said was because we knew that they were dying, but according to you, that even when you know that the person's giving it because they're dying, you need a kinyan, he says you're reading those cases wrong. You were assuming that those cases were cases of Matna Shchimira b'mixas. They're not. You were just concentrating on one aspect of the story. This person got a small piece, but at the same time, this Shchimera gave him a small piece, and him a small piece, and him a small piece, and him a small piece. He gave away all of his stuff at once. So this small part was part of giving away all of the properties, and that's why you didn't need a kinyan. But in a Chanami, Rav Huna argues on everything we've been saying, and he says that if you give away a man Shchimera b'mixas, even if you go ahead and claim, if you give a manashkim rabbi mixas, according to him, it will not work without a kinyan because we don't use this svara that if you're giving him machmas misa, that we're going to let you keep it. But again, we don't hold like that. V'hilchasa manashkim rabbi mixas baya kinyan v'afagav demes. And the halacha is that a manashkim needs a b'mixas needs a kinyan, even if the person dies. However, mitzave machmas misa lo baya kinyan v'hu demes. If you're mitzvah machmas misa, you don't need a kinyan if he dies. Amar chozer v'yafagav dekanu minei. So let's just see that again. What's the halacha? This is important. Mana shchimera b'mixas b'ya kinyan. If a person is a shchimera, he's in bed, we don't know he's for sure going to die, and he gives a matana, and we have no clue what he's thinking, because he doesn't say, I'm giving it because I'm going to die, then what? What's the halacha? Like we said, you need a kinyan because we assume it's a regular matana, and it's not going to work without a kinyan. And therefore, if he gives it b'mixas, even if he ends up dying, if there was no kinyan, the person doesn't get it, because what? Because we assume that it was a matana, and the matana doesn't work. However, if he gives all of his stuff, then we know that what? You don't need a kinyan, and therefore if he dies, then the person gets to keep it. Mitzave machmas misa, but in this case of manish chimera b'mixas, where we know that he's giving it only because he thinks he's dying, then lo by a kinyan, v'hu demes. Then you don't need a kinyan, and then if he dies, l'maisa, the guy gets to keep it. But amar chozer. But since a man nashchimera b'mixas, if we know that he's only giving it because he's dying, then we treat it like a man nashchimera b'kulo. Therefore, if he gets better, he gets it back. V'yafagav dekanu minei, even with a kinyan. So again, it comes out. We're going to stop here, but again, it comes out that l'maisa we have two different possibilities. We have a case where man nashchimera gives it, and l'maisa you don't need a kinyan. What's that? Man nashchimera either b'kulo, where he gives all of his money without specifying, or man nashchimera b'mixas, where you specify that I'm only giving this stuff because I think I'm going to die. Both of those cases, you don't need a kinyan, and in both of those cases, we treat it as a magna shchimera bekulo, and if the person gets better, he gets to keep it. And seemingly, if he gives it to a few different people, the last person who gets it will get to keep it. The only case where we're going to take it back is a magna shchimera, if you do it b'mixas, and you don't make clear what you're thinking. If you give part of your property and you don't make clear that you're only giving it because you're dying, then we assume that you're giving it as a matana, and therefore, lamaisa, if you want it to work as a matana, you need to do a kinyan, and if you don't do a kinyan, so then the person you're giving it as a matana will not actually get it, and it'll come back to the shchimera. So again, at the end of the day, the only case where somebody can get a mana shchimera b'mixas and actually keep it is the case where we go ahead and he gives the money, we don't know what he's thinking, and he goes ahead and does a kinyan. In that case, that's a full-fledged matana, and the guy can never get it back. In any case, where we know that he's thinking that where we know that he's thinking that he's only giving it away because he's dying, he gets it back no matter if it's a mixus, whether it's a not a mixus, whether it's a kulo, whether he does a kinyan, whether he doesn't do a kinyan. If we know that the only reason he's giving it away is because he thinks that he's dying, at the end of the day, he can switch as many times as he wants. If he dies, it'll go to the last person, but if he gets better, he'll get it back no matter what. Shkayach.